Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Gareth Allen. How's it going, man?
Ben, it's inauguration day here in DC, so it's clearly
Oof.
a madhouse. Yeah, it's clearly a madhouse, and my buddy is actually like he works on the federal side, and so as part of that, you're required to put in so many volunteer hours. So he spent all day Sunday getting ready for the inauguration, and then they told him, "Oh, it's going to be inside. We'll call you if we need you." It just didn't. So it all was like,
For
wasn't
not.
needed at all. So he was thrilled about that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. No, I mean, between the cold weather and the
Yeah.
craziness, I am sure you are staying right where you are today.
Yeah. Well, I might go over to that same buddy's place to go watch the football game today, which is the only redeeming thing about having everyone else being off. They're all like, "Are you getting off today?" I was like, "No, I'm not getting off today." Well, you weren't off today either, though.
No, no, yeah. So this is going to be a weird podcast. This is not a normal. I'm not in my normal place. The conference room that I'm normally in, booked, not available. I'm doing this in between meetings right now, so we're gonna squeeze in. We're not gonna get to probably all the performances. Certainly, we're not. We're gonna skip all the transfer stuff because there's so much to get into, and we want to be able to spend our time on all of that. But we had a lot of really awesome performances to talk about. But before we get to that, you want to talk about awesome performances? Our audience, awesome performances this past couple of weeks. I leave again for a week, and Garrett does a solo pod, and you know what happens? We get a lot of ratings and reviews. It's either they really really like the solo pods, or they're so desperate for me to come back that they'll do anything to make sure that that happens. We got 3 new ratings on Apple Podcast and 8 on Spotify from 2 weeks ago. Crazy.
I like to imagine they're like, well, wait, if we incentivize Garrett to just do this alone all the time, maybe he'll never come back. And I like to imagine that, but that's okay. That's okay. He's under contract. He's coming back whether you like it or not. So yeah, and that's why we need you for today because we just came off opening weekend, and I know Boston U indoor season opener kind of already happened, but that's not really the
No.
opening weekend. This past weekend was the true opening weekend. We saw multiple all-time marks. It was just a phenomenal weekend, and I have no idea where you want to start, so I'll let you take it.
Yeah, let's start with an NCAA record, which I feel like we've said so many times. Like when I was re-listening through the 2024 pods to do like the best stuff, I was like, man, we talk about a lot of NCAA records this year, and 2025 is off to a fast start as well. Tinoda Matsatsa breaks his own 1,000-meter record of 2:18 and runs 2:16, completely skips over the 2:17s, running 2:16.84 to set a new record in the 1K. And his teammate Abel Tefra also goes under the old NCAA record, running 2:17. It was interesting. I was reading your analysis yesterday, and on one hand, it's like, yeah, you could see a record breaking performance coming, right? The 354 from Matsatsa. Even Tefra's been on to off to a good start. Like
Mhm.
maybe you didn't expect him to break the record, but you could have expected really good performances from both these men. The levels that they went, though, I think is the surprising part, right?
Yeah.
To just go from, I mean, again, he was very close to 217, 218.005 is about as close as you can get, but just to jump almost like a second and a half better in the thousand, where every second is a
Mhm.
painstaking thing to bring down, and you don't get to run it very often. Again, this is your first race back from after winter break, and he brings the heat with a new NCAA record.
Oh, good line. That was excellent. Nice job. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think both you and I thought it's plenty realistic for him to run under 218. It's plenty realistic for him to break his own record, run 217. I think we even thought, hey, it might even be plenty realistic for Tefra to run 218 as well.
Sure.
To run 216, now, whether we like it or not, I think we have to put Matsatsa in the 800-meter national title conversation.
Yeah.
I think we have to, and I think that's what this does. If he hadn't already run 354 in the mile, I would be maybe a little more hesitant to say that. But we now have two performances which show that he has not just taken a step up, he has taken a leap up to a point where I'm like, man, this guy was already phenomenal and pretty refined as a freshman, and
Yep.
he's going to run this fast with another year of experience under his belt. What can he do now that he actually knows what he's doing? And so, just beyond impressed by Matsatsa and then Tefra. I think it validates his All American performance in the mile from last time. I had a question for you. I'm trying to figure out. Oh, is there a is Georgetown the best middle distance group in the country right now? Is Texas A&M there? Is Iowa State still there?
What are we defining middle distance? Because we're about to talk about
Let's
another a program that just put together some pretty impressive mile performances.
right. So how about this? How about 800? Let's just talk about 800.
Yeah,
800 1K. 800 1K. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's almost a dead heat with a lot. I think saying that they're better than Iowa State and A&M, you almost give to the edge to the incumbent, right? And I think in those cases, those programs have proven a lot more than what Georgetown has at the national meet over the last couple of years. Eh, so I wouldn't necessarily give it to them yet, but they're trending in the right direction. And if they put together a good national performances this indoor and outdoor season, I think you can credibly say that they are because we've seen some depth from them. We've seen these top end type of incredible performances now in back to back years. So I think really their last thing for them to do is have someone finish high up in the 800, and like you're saying, Matsatsa, it seems like he's on track to do that. And coming in from high school, I think we always expected it wasn't a matter of if, but when he got to that level, right? And we saw the flashes, and we were thinking, maybe he breaks in a little bit earlier than we expect freshman year. Didn't quite play out that way, but I think that experience was invaluable. And with this fitness, all he really needs is experience to go along with that, and tactical smarts, and knowing how to or what race to expect when he gets to national meet, because he has the legs. He's going to be able to hang with anybody, it looks like. So I think this is the year when he really does put himself in that tier for the next couple of years, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at this point, though, I think when you start running as fast as he does, if he has like a phenomenal year, wins a national title, maybe two, the incentive to go pro will likely be very high. I mean, or unless an
Yeah.
NIL deal comes in, which I'm sure I don't know if it already has. Maybe he's already at New Balance. Who knows? Um, who knows? So we'll see what happens there. But moving off of, fun fact, small fun fact. They ran that on the Penn State track. That Penn State indoor track now owns both 1K records on the men's and women's side. Fun fact.
Huh. I
Yeah.
like that.
Because technically, Laura Pellicoro did not technically get the
Yeah.
NCAA record. And we'll talk about her momentarily. Um, Staying on the middle distance side, but moving to an opposite coast, Nathan Green, 350.74, I believe. He not only runs 350.74, but Roden McMahon Stags runs 351, and 7 other Washington runners go under 4 minutes. 3 of them were at 355, 3 of them were at 358, and 1 other was at 359. Thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what was the most surprising thing about this for you? Was it the top end performances, or just the sheer number of guys under four?
Well, let's think about it like this. Green under 4 is not surprising. McMahon is not
No,
surprising.
never.
Lindhorst is not surprising. Dashbach is not surprising. So, Hammond's not
Acer
surprising.
Iverson.
Asa Iverson's a little surprising, maybe a little bit. Thomas Diamond is a little surprising. Evan Jenkins is not crazy surprising.
Yeah,
Maybe Jamar Diestel by a little. But in terms of like, hey, if I told you that these guys were all going to go sub 4 this season, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah,
For them to all do it at the same meet on the same weekend, pretty insane. For me, the biggest thing that I get from this is, one, Nathan Green can break the NCAA record this season if he
yep.
really wants to, if he really wants to go after it. And then two, Rhoda McMahon Stags, we now have to completely reevaluate how we think about him.
Yeah, and that was going to be my like most surprising result was the Ronan McMahon stacks. Like Nathan Green running 350 is crazy, but he's been one of the best milers in the country for the last year or so. For him to run close to the NCAA record is awesome, but not stunning. And then the rest of the guys, like you said, like sub 4 isn't quite what it used to be. And then you have this kind of meet which is set up for just a bunch of people to go sub 4, and they're all training together, and they know who's going to be pacing them. They're all running in the same, like, this is very well set up. Like the Powells just have this factory where it's just you show up in line, you run your sub 4. Like it's they've standardized it to a point where that many is crazy, but it's still not like stunning. So, but the McMahon Stags one, that is what is surprising to me, because we saw him break out. What was it? Was it 2 years ago? Before he
Yeah, 2 years
transferred.
ago. Mhm.
2 years ago, I think he ran 55 maybe,
54.
355, 54, and then transferred to Washington. We didn't see a big breakout year from him after he transferred. Kind of stayed about where he was. But I think that 354 from a couple of years ago really showed that there was talent, and that if he could improve under this Washington program, then he could become one of the best miners in the country. And that's what this performance shows, that he has elevated himself to a level of contention where Washington, sure, they just lost two of their three just studs up front. But now it looks like they got one guy to replace those guys. I mean, replacing Wascom and Hauser is I'm not going to say that he's going to do that, but it looks like he has the potential of filling some of those gaps that they thought they would just be relying on Nathan Green solely. And I think that's really interesting. Again, the experience that Green has, the experience that this coaching staff has. If McMahon Stags can just run every single race with Nathan Green, I think he's going to end up finishing like way higher at the national meet than we would ever expect.
Yeah, I agree. And I think now when you run 351, I hesitate, especially in the third weekend of January, to be like all American favorite, you know?
Yeah.
But how many times have we said a 351 miler is not an all American favorite? It's a very conflicting thing. And it's not like he doesn't have experience or he doesn't have pedigree or he hasn't, shown, exceptional talent before, but it's such a leap that we just don't really know how to gauge and measure it right now. I don't know if you listened to last week's pod, but I wanted to ask, in terms of
Sure.
Nathan Green, who do you think, or do you think someone will break the mile NCAA record this season? And if so,
Yes.
who is it?
I mean, I think you gotta say Nathan Green at this point, right? I think before this weekend, I think there probably would have been a variety of answers that you could have had, but I think we're just gonna see NCAA records go down fairly frequently, and 350 is a very good one. But and it took like Olympic level athletes to do it, right? But I think we've seen enough out of a lot of these guys that it's within range. And now with Nathan Green being less than a half a second away from it, I think you got to give him the most likely one to do it, just because he has like a month or so to be able to pick his race and go for it. I mean, he doesn't really have to race again the rest of the season unless he
No.
wants to. And I think the only reason he would want to would be to go after that record.
Yeah, and I think it's going to come at Melrose.
Yeah.
I just imagine he'll find a way to get into Melrose if he's not already in there. I haven't even checked the entries, honestly. But I think it was only pros the last I checked. But regardless, yeah, I'm
Who else do
hesitant
you
to.
think could break it?
Well, I think Strand and Spencer could. I
Sure.
think who was the other one I had? I think Salmon's upside. He would be like one of the lesser guys, I think, but because he ran that 1500, because of his upside, because of his improved aerobic capacity on the grass, I'm like in a perfect scenario, I could see something happening. So I would take, probably those four guys. Mm, I don't think Liam Murphy. I think he'd get close. I don't think Liam Murphy.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'd go them. But I said on the last pod that I think someone's going to break the mile
Yeah.
NCAA record. So
Yeah.
does it do you hesitate at all knowing that Green ran it on a 300-meter track? 309 meters, whatever. I mean,
Uh, hesitate in what way? That it's easier to do it on that?
Right. In theory, at
Yeah, I
least.
mean, I always thought that the 300 was way easier to do it on to run on indoors than the 200-meter banked. No, because I mean he'll get another chance to do it. Like I mean if I mean maybe it's Milrose and he doesn't, but I think I mean there's that end of year Washington meet that if he wanted to go for it, I think he could go for it and do it there. I yeah I don't I talking to different people, I think there's more of a consensus that those tracks are more similar than maybe I give them credit for. I think for taller guys, I think it is maybe a little bit more difficult, but I think for someone like Green, it really isn't that. It's not all that different.
Yeah, that was like your biggest nightmare, basically, right?
Oh, I
Because you're
hate
pretty
I
tall. Yeah.
no, I'm not. I'm not even that tall. That's the thing, and
How tall are
I
you?
still hate it. I'm 5'9".
Ben, there's no way. You're taller than me. That's no shot.
I
Well, then you grew up. You ate
this
your vegetables and you grew up incredibly quick. You're not. You're not 5'9". I've seen you twice, three times.
I'm maybe 5'10", maybe on a good day.
Yeah, I'd say 5'11" on my Hinge profile, so that's okay. So all right, let's let's move off of that. We're going to Laura Pellicoro, Portland.
Yes.
Also in last weekend's pod, I said, here's three names to watch, three on the men, three on the women. And I said, Laura Pellicaro. Gotta watch out for her. She's really good, experienced, has multiple All-American honors, mainly on the grass. Has had really great range, has made some of her greatest improvements in recent races. I could see her being like a big factor. I did not see her running 2:37 for 1,000 meters at that same UW preview meet, which is on a 300-meter track. So she doesn't technically get that because she raced on an oversized track, but she is now the fastest collegiate to ever have run 1,000 meters. How does this change how we view her moving forward?
Yeah, I think it has to because I never thought like the 1,000 would be like a great race for her, right? Like that. You look at her resume and it's, I mean, yeah, she's run 2:03 in the 8, she's run 4:11 in the 15, but again, it's like someone that you think like the 3K it would be like a really good race for her, or the mile, like the 1,000 almost seems too short, and the fact that that's where she ran 2:37 and almost 2:36, like she was like less than a tenth a second away from running 2:36. I think that just, and again, I don't think she's going to drop down to the 800. I do think this makes her a bigger threat in the mile than I think anybody would have expected. And I mean, it's such a loaded field in the mile that saying like, again, All American lock feels like dangerous at this point because it is so early and the 1,000 is not like completely representative of what you can run in the mile, but you got to feel like she's now in that not in that like national contending group, but in that next bigger group of women that you're like right, either All Americans or right on the fringe, like the group of women that you expect to make the final. I think that's where you have to put her now, which is an elevation from, I think we both thought she would make the national meet, but I don't think we necessarily thought she would make a ton of noise in the national meet. And this performance shows that she could absolutely do that.
The thing with Pellicaro is that, well, first off, I have two questions for you. Okay. One, how fast do you think she runs a mile this year? And then
Yep.
two, here's some background. She's had three appearances on the national meet between the 800, 1,500, and mile. She has failed to get out of the prelims in each of those instances. She just ran 8:53 in the 3K back in December. If she runs 8:50, 8:51, she's probably, knock on wood, she's probably getting into the national meet. And if she's not, then you know what? Good luck. But
Sad.
is there any like inclination in you to just say, just go to a final, just get into a final that you know you can make like the 3K, where it's already a final, and just make it happen?
Yeah, I think there is some inclination, especially in the 3K where you're running against a lot of people who are doubling back, right? And I think there is an advantage to coming into that fresh. And then, I think it also it's like it's going to be a flat out. It could very well be a flat out race, right? Depending on who's in it. if Lemon Gull's just hammering away, like that's probably not her best style of race. And so I think there is some logic to prioritizing the 3K where you're in the final, you're going to beat like 5 women just because you're fresh and they're not. But I think in terms of upside, I think the mile is still where she should land. And as far as mile time, I think she can run 4:28. Like
Yep.
she's run 4:31. I don't think it's a stretch to say she can run like 3 seconds faster after this 1,000-meter performance. And that puts her right in a range of like, again, I don't think she's going to contend, but I think a 5th place performance is not out of the cards. And I think that's higher upside for her. Again, comes with a little bit more risk than she could ever expect necessarily in the 3K.
I'm going to move us off of Pellicoro. I agree with everything you just said, by the way. Hayley Kitching, I don't really feel like we need to spend a ton of time on this just because it wasn't totally surprising.
No.
Penn State's Hayley Kitching, who has run 2 flat.7. She's been a multiple-time All-American. She is incredibly consistent, tactically excellent, surprisingly like sneaky good range. She ran 2:39 over 1,000 meters. Quick thoughts, takes. Do we have a quick thought?
Yeah, I just think it's shows that she's taken another step in her progression and that she's ready to attack this year. And I think the most important thing for her, and we've talked about this with a lot of people, is she just has to clear that threshold of fitness, right? Where you can be competitive. Like you're giving yourself a chance. So a lot of these women who are tactically strong, right? They don't need to be the best fitness wise. They just have to clear that like arbitrary bar of fitness. So whatever that is. And I think this 2:39 shows that she's clearly able to do that and be competitive. And now she can just let her experience, her instincts take over and give her a shot at being very, very competitive at the national meet.
Yeah, I think there's like a handful of women, only a small handful, who are more talented over 800 meters than Kitching. But I also think that it's when you have the tactical IQ and like just the racing know-how that she does and the experience that she does, she's one of them. She's one of like my most among all the non-national title favorites or national title contenders in the NCAA. She's the most comfortable All-American favorite that I think I have on
Yes.
the women's side. She should. I'm just like, yeah, chalk her up to a 5th place finish, 4th place finish. Like, feel really good about it. So
She feels very BYU woman, like
Megan
800-meter
Hunter.
runner. Like, yeah, like just like their long line of like
Oh, yeah, yeah,
of like she kind of fits that mold, right? Where it's like, sure, she's not going to go run 1:59, but she's going to run 2:01 or 2 flat and like be in
yeah. That's a
5th
good point.
at the national meet. It feels very, very similar, or even finish 3rd when someone falls off a little bit. Like I
Right.
think that's certainly in the cards for her.
Um.
But yeah,
All right. Go
let's
ahead. Go
move
ahead.
on
I'll let you go.
and let's talk about another first that we have that we got to experience, and that was seeing 2 men break 4 minutes in the mile on Colorado
Two
soil.
collegiates, three men.
Two
Three men have
collegiate,
run it.
yeah, correct, yeah, two collegiates going under. Colorado State, Pueblo, Reece, Sharman-Newell, and Colorado's Isaiah Givens, both running 3:59. Sharman-Newell converting to 3:53, and Givens 3:54. Very cool. Like we've talked about this for a long time. When was this going to happen? It's crazy that it happened at Flagstaff before it happened in
Oh my
Boulder.
gosh, that's
Um,
right.
but it was coming, and it's very cool. I think for both of these guys to say that they are the first collegiates to do it. It's been a long time coming, and for them to go under this milestone, which I think, like I said, sub 4 isn't what it used to be, but at this many feet altitude, it absolutely is, and so very cool. And D2 just, I mean, we don't talk about D2 here, but you look at the performances like week in and week out. I mean, D2 and D3 level. I mean, we would be talking about these guys as like national title favorites from D1 like 5-6 years ago. Like it's amazing how much the level has increased.
Yeah, I mean D2 for Reece Sharman-Newell, like he did not compete for CSU Pueblo for the last year, redshirted. He had run 1:45, and he had proven to be a pretty solid 1,500-meter runner. He was competitive, but he was clearly an 800-meter runner who liked to go gas, gas, gas. I guess he came off of this block of like a year of like, I'm gonna just become an aerobic animal. he's now running 353. I mean, that on paper, I think that just obliterates the mile record in D2. I don't even know what it is.
It has
I'm
to.
sure it has to obliterate it, right? Unless Noble ran something crazy fast that I'm just not aware of. But I mean, it's pretty crazy fast, and now D2 gets a lot more interesting with Sharman-Newell. Isaiah Givens, this is a guy who was already competitive in the mile. Like he had qualified for the mile national meet, I think last year, maybe 2 years ago. I forget which. But him running this fast is a clear, just another step in his progression. He's getting stronger. He's getting better. He's getting faster. I think we still need to see him run a mile, a competitive mile at sea level,
Yep.
and just kind of get a proper gauge of like, we know you're incredibly fit. We know that you'll have a shot to at least make the finals, but give us a little bit more context about this time. But I don't want to take that away from what they did, becoming the first men to officially go sub 4. There was an OAC
Right.
time trial with Joe Klecker and Ali Huar. They both went comfortably under 4, I think 2 years ago, back in 2020, excuse me, 2021 maybe. And that's like, it was called a certified intra squad time trial that I read. And I was like, I don't know how that technically counts, but
Yeah,
okay.
how does that translate? Like that's the most nebulous name of a quote unquote meet that you're ever gonna see.
Yeah. So I didn't know, but that's all I got there.
Yeah, yeah, and for Givens, I'll echo a lot of the things you just said. I good performance again shows that he's healthy, he's ready to roll. We want to see if he can continue that momentum before making any broad proclamations on him.
Yep.
Let's move on to another converted performance in the mile, and that was Alex Carlson of NAU running 437, converting down to 427. Extremely strong performance for her. And I mean, honestly, I think with her coming to NAU, this was kind of what we were hoping to get out of her, right? Like to take that next step forward. You're training with higher quality athletes at altitude, and we started to see some of that during the cross country season, some of those benefits. And I think now we're really seeing that translate to the track here, where she, I mean, puts down, I think, the best performance of her career.
That's a good question. Is it the best performance of her career?
I I think so, right?
I
Am
mean,
I forgetting
427
something?
is a pretty, like 437 at 7,000 feet is pretty impressive. So I
Yeah.
guess, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it probably is the most impressive performance. Um, I think what this performance does more than anything else is that it shows us that Carlson is back at the very peak of her fitness.
Yes.
And she had run incredibly well like 2 or 3 years ago, had a little bit of a calf strain, and then she built her way back up to being competitive, but she was never quite that competitive ever
Yep.
again until now. And now you get a 427 altitude conversion, and you go, okay, she's back at the peak of her fitness at least. Now, how much higher beyond that is she really? And again, I think this is another thing that we won't know until she runs a sea level mile or something at sea level in general. But she's incredibly dangerous. She's experienced now. She's only getting stronger, and she has the pedigree to do it. Like she still has a ton of untapped potential, and I'd be incredibly scared of her. And plus, Maggie Congdon proved last year, hey, these conversions are very legitimate for NAU. So
Yeah, yeah. And I was gonna mention another name now. This wasn't run at altitude, it was run at sea level, but I this isn't Chloe Forster's like just out of nowhere sub 430 performance. This is again, this maybe feels kind of out of nowhere for Carlson because she hasn't run this well for a little bit, but she's had the experience of being a top collegiate before. Like this, is she not going to be surprised at the national meet, like or surprised running against some of these women? She's been there, done that before. So I think a lot of times when we see these breakout kind of performances, we're like, let's pump the gas on what we can expect national level. With her, I feel a little bit more comfortable saying, hey, I think she's positioned herself where she really can be an All American contender, and someone that I think is going to be able to translate this clearly newfound fitness.
I agree. I completely agree. All right, let's move off of her and stay in Flagstaff. We'll go to Ford Washburn on the men's side. The NAU sophomore ran 404 in the mile at altitude, converts to 355. The way that I put this in the first thoughts article is that if you look at this performance, it's exciting, right? Like he has a shot at now making the national meet.
Yep.
Might still need to run a little bit faster. Um, it gives them another option for scoring. Like, awesome, that's great. But in the grand scheme of things, he's still incredibly young. He still has tons of eligibility left. And now we're seeing a performance which says Ford Washburn can be a national caliber name for the next few years. And as NAU attempts to rebuild their powerhouse roster, and they still have Colin Solomon, and they have that guy from Israel who they just brought over, Coach Jared Kornfeld now has a little bit more room to breathe if Ford Washburn is going to be able to replicate this performance moving forward.
Yeah, I had the same exact reaction of this. He's just proving that he's another possible building block, right? Again, this feels very like this is your breakout performance. This isn't necessarily your breakout season, right? Where
Oh,
you become like a contender. But this kind of performance elevates you to the level of you are running in better meets. You're running against better competition. You're testing yourself against the best. And so when it comes around to next fall, that fitness is going to translate to the grass. And then next year we could really see something out of him where hey he can be right there with maybe he's not right there with Solomon, but he's at the national meet with Solomon, and I think and can be competitive there. So I think very very encouraging for all the reasons you laid out, and I will try to reiterate too many of those points.
355.22 was his conversion. Does that get in?
No,
I think you're right too. Isn't that wild?
I think it's going to be under 355.
Well, so after scratches, it was
350 was it 356 low?
355.46.
Oh, okay, so yeah, that makes me feel even better.
Yeah. So okay. Moving on, Thomas Boyden of Stanford runs 741 over 3,000 meters, defeating teammate Cole Sprout, who ran 745. Not only that, but both of those men then ran 357 in the mile the next day. So,
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah, I mean, good to see them both healthy and firing. Like, I think that's basically the big takeaway, especially for Sprout. Like, again, not reaching the same heights that maybe we saw from a couple years ago, but he looks good and is healthy. And for Boyden, like we've always kind of known that there was like this kind of performance in him, right? Like he's shown these flashes. So it's hard to say that we learned a whole lot from Boyden necessarily. If he can stack a couple of these together, a couple of weekends in a row where he can stay healthy, continue to improve, I think he could be an under the radar name in the 3K when it's like, hey, he comes in fresh and he surprises a lot of people because at his very best, there isn't a whole lot of people outside of that top tier of names that can really beat him. It's just how often are you going to see him at his absolute peak?
Last year, 743.83 got you into the national meet for the 3K.
Yeah.
This year, Thomas Boyden's 741.85 has him at number 7. Does he get into the national meet?
Yes, that I will say, yes.
I got to be honest, I'm actually not nearly as confident about that as you are.
Oh, man, really?
I can't believe I'm saying this. He's already at 7, and I can think of like 7 guys off the top of my head who are going to run maybe faster than 741.85 this season.
So I'm just looking at the people who have run fast 5K times that did not. So you got Murphy, Masao, Langone, Schubert, possibly. Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
sure there's an international name like that we're not even realizing. Strangio.
yeah,
Strangio, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's guys. 741. I feel like is good though. Like now it's
Okay.
741 high, which is a little nerve wracking. Like I would love it if it was
That's my
741.2,
thing.
not 4.8.
Yeah. Like, well, I will say this. I question if guys like Adam Spencer or Nathan Green run it. Now, like they
Yeah,
usually do, but like what would be the point? So
right. Yeah. Yeah, we still got to do our over unders because
I know. I've been meaning to do
this
that.
is getting crazy. All right, let's move on to the next performances, and that was Kyle Reinheimer and Justin O'Toole running 146. A lot of 146s
Mhm,
this weekend. What
mhm.
did you think about these guys running under 147?
The biggest two middle distance graduate transfer steals of the summer. They were already really talented, and, like, I was really high on O'Toole, especially. He had run
Yeah,
147, 220, I wanna say. Like, I really saw a lot of potential in him in Columbia. Wasn't as quite as consistent as would have liked him to be, but for Reinheimer, I mean, he had run 148 and 221, so, like, he was good. 146, I mean, that's probably gonna get both of those guys into the national meet, unquestionably, and
yeah.
you just kinda think about this, I'm like, "Wow." So, like, now these guys just kind of opened the door of like, hey, if any of those Washington milers wanted to step down in distance, right, to go to the 800, they don't need them now, right? Or maybe they put one guy there and one guy on the DMR. It's just a whole like it just opens the door of possibilities for what they can do. And they're two phenomenal results. Still want to see them validate this, but I don't think this was like a fluke race. I think this was very legitimate, especially for O'Toole.
Yeah. I think that for Washington, yeah, this just expands the ever growing amount of possibilities that they could have for that DMR, and it probably enables them to, like you said, not run all their top guys and still feel like they can finish in the top three, right? I mean that's a pretty wild thing to say, but they just have so much depth. And again, like for both of these guys, I like you said, I don't feel super confident saying anything about expectations for the national championship. But if they do this again and they beat someone maybe we're not expecting them to beat over the next couple weeks, then I think that noise becomes a little louder. Of hey, this is these are all American type of athletes. Whereas right now, I think we're looking at it as hey, this could be a good story just to make the national meet.
Who is the kind of runner, not specifically, but who's the kind of runner, like what name in the NCAA where you'd be like, if you beat this guy, I'll take you seriously as an All American contender.
What type
Not
of
that they
guy
have to beat that
or what
guy.
name?
What type of right? Like go on last year's national leaderboard, right? And I'm
Yeah.
there, so it's like who would they need to beat? Would they need to beat Abdul Ali Hassan? Would they need to beat Sam Austin, Handel Robon, Valdo Marshall?
I think Sam Austin's a good line. I
Hmm.
think that kind of runner where it's like, hey, it's someone who has been to the national meet, isn't necessarily someone that has consistently like not a Handel Raban who has like put together some like top performances at the national meet, but someone who has traditionally been at the national meet, is fringe All American kind of candidate. If you can beat that type of athlete, then I think that's when you start to feel like this is a little bit more serious.
And now the same question will be applied to a Penn State duo
Yes.
of Darius Smallwood and Olivier Desmeules. Sure, I got that right for sure. 146 for 800 meters for both of them. Smallwood takes the win. Second fastest indoor 800-meter time in Penn State history for him. Um,
Crazy.
for me, I need to see a little bit more out of Smallwood, just because he's always been talented. Like he's run 146 before, but this feels like a different leap for him. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is pretty special. Let's see, can you back that up and validate it? Desmueles, I have really liked him a lot. I've thought he's one of the more complete 800-meter runners in terms of consistency and tactics and experience and just he's really strong at positional championship 800-meter running. The
Yep.
only thing that kind of held him back was his PR. I was like, he kept running 147, 148, 147, 148. He finally runs 146. And I feel comfortable, even now, even in the third week of January, I don't mind saying he's probably going to get into the national meet. I actually don't hate him as a sleeper pick for All American honors.
Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who won the Big Ten title indoors 2 years ago. Like, it's not as if this is someone who is not been around the top of the NCAA for a while, and this is like a shocking breakout race. He's he's shown these kind of flashes before, at least in terms of where he's finished in races, not necessarily that finishing time. And to your point, the finishing time now, I think, elevates him to a level where he's someone that you would look at in the prelims at the national meet and think, hey, he's probably you would think he's an underdog to make the finals, but with his experience, with his history, I think he's someone that would be a great pick. But if you're picking right now to say, hey, he's going to be one of those 8 men in that final at the national meet.
Yeah, like him a lot. Really, really like him a lot. Let's do a few rapid fire. I've only got 3 performances here, wanting to highlight, just because they're not totally shocking or there's not totally a ton to talk about. So
Yeah,
I'm just gonna list off. It's 3 headlines with 5 performances. I'm gonna list off each of those 5 performances, and you're gonna tell me in 1 sentence your thoughts. All right?
sure. Yeah,
All
let's
right, here
go.
we go. Stanford's Juliet Whitaker runs 4:31 at UW Preview.
Business as usual for the Olympian.
No, I like it. Sophia Kennedy runs 4:32 from Stanford at the UW Preview.
Nice progression in her range and just to her overall ability. It makes me a lot more excited about what she can do in the 3K, 5K this year.
I agree. 3K, I'm very excited about her. That was much better speed and turnover than I thought she had. Mia
Yeah,
Cochran, 4:33. She transferred over from Arkansas, now with Washington. Thoughts?
fitting in right away with the Huskies.
All right. Uh, Isabella Whitaker, who, yes, is the sister of Juliet Whitaker, in her first ever 800-meter race, runs 2:02, and what it was admittedly a very top-heavy field. First thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just excited to see what she can do with her oh gosh, I can't say that word.
Pedigree?
With her with yeah, pedigree. I was gonna say bloodline, but I was like that sounds too weird. But with her pedigree, with her sister, I'm very excited to see what she can do in her next few races.
And finally, Arkansas's Ruben Reyna. By the way, Whitaker was also with Arkansas. And Arkansas's Ruben Reyna runs 3:55 in the mile.
Yeah, validating of his entire career and a good way to show the overall talent.
Oh, love that. All right. Kudos, Ben. Kudos. Nice job there. That's all we have for today. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to any of the international editions, any of the transfer news, any of some of the NCAA settlement stuff, but I like to think that we were pretty exhaustive today and we got a lot of it out. We have tons of first thoughts articles on the site. We got 2 of them, especially. We're going to have prediction articles all throughout the season. Updated D2, D3 rankings are coming this week. If you're listening, they should already be out. And yeah, we're working on ways to find new value. So stay tuned. We're going to continue working on this. And I think that's all I have.
Awesome. Well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.